Andy Tiller, and I'm the EVP for Products and Services at TM Forum. So today we have 5 case studies on real-world implementations of ODA, TM Forum's open digital architecture. But before we get into the agenda, I have an award to make. So many of you may know of our Running on ODA program, which is run by our CTO office. With Running on ODA, we work together with some of our leading members who are implementing ODA in their networks and IT operations. And we assess them and help them along six key dimensions, which are the principles of ODA, the governance, the APIs, components, use of ODA components in their networks and IT operations, and 2 more that slip my mind at the moment. But for those who pass the assessment on all 6 dimensions, we give them a special trophy. This is the Golden OD. OD is the mascot. This is the Golden OD Award. And I'm very pleased to say this morning to be able to announce to you that AT&T's MVNX business has achieved the status of running on ODA. So I'd like to ask Joe Torres, who runs the 5G strategy for the MVNX business, and Stephanie Ormiston, who is the AVP for the platforms for MVNX, to come up and accept this Golden OD. So congratulations to you, Joe, and to Stephanie. Yeah, you might need to be here. All right.
Appreciate it.
Very well
Thank
done.
you.
Okay. So actually, AT&T MVNX business is the first US carrier to achieve the Running on ODA award. So it's a first for you guys. Well done. Okay, great. Thanks very much. Okay. Abhi Sir from Salesforce is the Director of Product Management for the comms business. And Vishok Persaud is the CEO for ENet in Guyana. Gentlemen, you're going to give us a fireside chat, and you're going to tell us about how you've exceeded customer expectations with your ODA-based transformation project. So welcome to the stage.
Vishok, maybe we'll start with the introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes, thank you, Abhi. My name is Vishok Persaud. I'm the CEO of ENet. ENet is a full telco in Guyana, South America. For those of you who don't know about Guyana or where Guyana is the fastest growing economy in the world by GDP. We recently became an oil-producing nation. Discoveries in between the 2015 to 2019, and a producing oil country in 2019. So we've seen tremendous amount of growth. We've seen a rapid quantum leap in all sectors, telecommunications being one of those. We operate a full suite of telco, fiber to the home, mobile, cable TV, business services like Ethernet, etc. And we have basically a strong portfolio of product. We're the only locally owned telco in Guyana. Guyana has 3 telecommunication companies, 2 of them which are multinationals.
So that was a bit of introduction of the kind of services that you offer to the customers in Guyana. Let's go back to the beginning and the start, where you all started. Could you tell our audience, what was the vision of your company when it started? What was the problem that you wanted to solve for the customers, which was a big problem at that time?
Right. So let me do that in a couple of quick phases. So we started as a small wireless ISP. Then we got into cable TV. In Guyana at the time, it was a heavily regulated sector, so they had a monopoly. Only one operator could basically do the telecommunications, and it was a US-based company. Then came VoIP and all the different things that disrupted that type of system. And Guyana only had 1 international fiber optic cable service in the country, and it was very expensive. I'm talking in 2019, we were still paying like $750 to $1,000 US for single megabit. Our company put it together, a local consortium, and we built the second fiber optic cable from Barbados to Guyana in 2019. It became operational in 2020. In 2020, the government also liberalized the sector, and they issued two additional full telecommunications licenses, of which we got one as the only local company. Now, it's almost like that's when our life began, despite having the years of being a wireless ISP and trying all these things, because now we had this huge influx of bandwidth, and we needed to sell it, we needed to monetize, we needed to do all these things. So we had our FTTH platforms. We were doing fairly well. We built out everything from there. But we got our mobile license in 2020, and we started to look at what are those solutions going to look like. I enlisted a series of consultants, And basically they said, you need to build LTE, but you need a 3G voice. I said, but why not VoLTE? So they said, if you build VoLTE, no handset will work because you're going to need to get all the handset vendors, etc. So I sat down and I said, but I got these two big giants. I do have this license. We need to make this work. But if I am to build a 3G voice network, one, there's no differentiation. Two, those guys already have sunk costs. So I started to looking at all the options, and we did a deal with a company called Mavenir, full open software system, cloud native, and we went with the VoLTE. Everything they said about the handsets now working was true. We eventually made contact with Apple and Samsung, and they were able to work with us. That process alone took about 15 months just to get the phones homologated. Tiny market, nobody paying attention. Very hard to even find the right person to speak to get it done. But Apple specifically, they were so excited that the fact that this was happening in LATAM, and they made a special effort to get us. So we built the first 5G network in Guyana. One of the first to go commercial in the Caribbean. As a matter of fact, I think there are less than 5 that are commercially there. We're the only VoLTE network in Guyana. And essentially, by that virtue, we won Ookla speed test for fastest fixed and mobile this year. So that speaks a little to how well the network is doing. But then came the bigger challenges, which is how do we manage all this growth? How do we scale all this growth? And we had started to use Salesforce, just the service and sales cloud, and we built our mobile application rollout on Salesforce. And while I was having, a chat with the Salesforce guys, they said, but you're a prime candidate for communications cloud. And I said, I know, but I saw it on the website listed for $4 million a year. So I didn't even click any further. But eventually Salesforce was able to put that, as you were aware, at a price point that was very affordable. And they started to scale it for all the industries. And we started looking at communications cloud. And with that came the ability to do everything. Because now we were looking at being able to offer first world service, something that we could not touch with our scale and size. And for context, we serve about 175,000 people, 100,000+ being mobile. Now, when we only started mobile in May 2023, we started in a nice way. We gave 90 days of free service, good old school. We had lines coming out the stores. So it was a good image for the country and the brand. But with Salesforce, we were able to now create all these offerings, all these things in real time. And when you look at the scale, we didn't have to, get our own private cloud. We didn't have to upgrade the data center. We were able to just look at this as a managed service offering, as a true cloud offering, and we were up and running, and we've been working with that ever since.
So you mentioned Salesforce, you mentioned Mavenir. I know that there are a lot of other players also in the ecosystem, the solution providers like Aria and also system integrators like Paladin. Could you tell the audience and share with us what makes the platform so unique that you have been able to bring it up? You mentioned 2019, 2020, that was the COVID era, right? So what makes the platform so unique that you will be able to jumpstart and get to the point today?
So one of the key things, and for those people looking at Salesforce, one of the key pillars in that industry stack is the ability to utilize MuleSoft. Mm-hmm. So we deployed MuleSoft, and this, it is beyond there's nothing that I have been able to think about, or my team have said, we want to do this, we want to do that, can we do this? That MuleSoft is not able to do. It's able to correct a lot of shortcomings in other systems. Like, for instance, we had a scenario where the other system could not respond. We were able to build queuing in MuleSoft. We've been able to do so many different things with MuleSoft. I was at Dreamforce last year. We met Aria, and they had a connector for Salesforce. We were looking to solve a billing issue, and within 60 to 90 days, that system was up and running. Again, we just went with the Aria Cloud in AWS. And considering that, we're in a third world country. We're offering all these different things. We don't have the in-house skill set, so all this becomes a lot easier when you're looking at these deployments. But we've got, and you can see the list there, we've got DocuSign, we've got Axios, PXS, all these. Imagine before doing this particular project, you look at all these systems. We would sign up the customer with a paper form, it would go to the next level, they would accumulate it. So with the implementation of Communications Cloud with MuleSoft and the integration with all the systems, we've cut down 33 manual tasks to 2. And we're going to get to the point now where customers can just sign up from the front end, whether the website or the app. And this is not just mobile services where you're getting, this is where we're doing full fiber rollouts. And from the time the person signs up, the next manual step is the field technician getting the job and going out to install it. And we've cut down what could have typically be 3 to 4 days of just, paper shuffling and data entry and all that to, like, there are 13 people, I love them, but they could go home right now. That's all they were doing. So we've had to restructure them, put them in different departments, where we're growing like our call center. We've doubled our headcount in the last 3 years, and call center being the highest demand, where we're seeing people want to communicate. Especially you got a scenario where people are now getting accustomed to using technology where for the first time it's affordable and accessible in Guyana. So a lot that you would take for granted here, like Google Maps and all these things, before we launched mobile, you would pay roughly about 35 US for about 2 gigs a month, and then it gets exorbitant after that. So nobody uses data for anything other than an emergency until they go home on the Wi-Fi. Since we launched mobile, it's unlimited calls, unlimited text. We've disrupted the market. But what we've done more fundamentally is we've actually changed the lives of a lot of young people. We have 70% of our population is under the age of 35. Now you could see, like we just started doing, phone financing. That was something that didn't exist. So there's this huge disruption, and we saw like one of my first PR when we launched. I said, I want to tell everybody in Guyana, don't ever pay for voice calls again. Don't even just download WhatsApp, but utilize the data. Look at your expenses, see how you can invest better. Of course, the competition don't like it, but the reality of it is that's how we're achieving change, especially where we are now seeing telecoms which is pretty much a greenfield country, being so effectively used in a short space of time, and that's being done in kind of like a real-time basis.
Right. So you mentioned about Salesforce and other providers who actually provide the solutions in the cloud, right? And tying it back to where we are here today being in the cloud, so I can safely say that you were born in the cloud, which is one of the ODA guideline principles. So one of the themes for this session is that how does conformance with ODA standards help CSPs like yours? Can you share with us that conformance with ODA, how has it influenced your product choices, your architecture decisions?
Yeah. So Abhi, I don't know how many CTOs are here, but one of the things that we did was when I learned about TM Forum and the fact that they had standard APIs, and for instance, Salesforce had what they call their out-of-box kind of solutions, guided sign-ups, different things. I said, this is what we'll do. We'll cap all our existing systems, because we've spent our life, every time we deal with software companies going through a discovery phase, we sit, they ask you, what do you do? How do you do it? And then you kind of build a suit. And that's almost, in a lot of the tech people, that becomes genetic. It's hard for them to step away from that. So I said, let's do this. Let's not tell them anything. Let them tell us what we should have, because all these big companies are doing this in the first world. Let them say, okay, these are what the TM forums are. This is the best practices. And what we did is we capped our old software, and we're gonna phase that out by the end of this year, hopefully. And we built greenfield. And everybody was like, no, you can't do that if the customer comes in. And I said, let's quickly find out this week how many archive type of requests that we have. And I've got one of the guys that works with us. He says it's the 97-3 rule. You punish 97% of the people to solve a 3% problem. So you end up where you feel you need to preserve all this historical. And in going that route, you inevitably step away from the best practices, because a guy is going to say, no, that's not how we do it. This is how we do it, and this is how we want to do it done. And they're not focused on saying, are we actually solving the customer's problem or the business case? So what we did is we say, hey, you got a blank canvas. You tell us what the best practices are, and let us go that direction. Arya was able to stand this up in 60 days. And we were able, now this is challenging, right? Because now you've got staff, you've got so many people that have to change their attitude towards doing something. Sometimes our own people are frustrating the process because they feel we don't want to make this change. This is how we've been doing it. They don't take the cost of time. So the implementation time taking long has a cost, despite, Comms Cloud being a subscription service, you still have to get it implemented. So in essence, we were able to basically start born in the cloud and practice the best, as is the best practice, right? And we're reaping the benefits of that now, because now we've got a platform that we can upgrade. We could take advantage of everything else that's coming out. And I think if they're smaller ISPs or CSPs, and they're thinking, listen, this is too expensive. This is, we need to look at all these smaller options that are out there. I mean, if you go to some of the shows, you could see OSP, OSS, BSS, 100 solutions out there. But what we saw is that if we stick with that, we would have saved some money maybe, but we would not be able to differentiate ourselves and disrupt the market, because we could not deploy what a Salesforce could bring to the table. We're already looking at Gen AI. We've seen some of the things that have come out of Dreamforce, all on a single platform, with MuleSoft being able to do anything with any of our other systems, who are almost all of them that are telco focused or TM forum focused as well. So that's becoming kind of a easy play for us to keep all this aligned. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think you answered the question very well, and I know that that most of the partner solution providers who are here, they also have a focus and a priority for deploying solutions with TM Forum standards as the first choice.
Right.
And I think having that as a starting point definitely helps, I guess. And because what I'm very much intrigued about is you started around the COVID time, 2019, where all the world, everyone, we are all going through the lockdown process, and you take the bold step of launching a company. Right, so that says a lot. I mean, how you take the best foot forward. Now, we talked briefly about the process. We talked about the technology, and you did mention a little bit about making impact on people. Ultimately, communication is a foundational service. I would be remiss if I don't ask this question about the people and the culture, and what kind of culture that you had that embraced the determination and the grit, if I may, right? So could you tell us, because technology doesn't exist in isolation, about a little bit of the culture in your company that you kind of set forward?
So let me give this premise. So in Guyana, we have 750,000 people, 83,000 square miles, so a lot of rural activity. Education is not easily accessed, but is accessible. So what we find is that we've got young kids that are exceptionally smart. They ace all the exams, they're book smart, they've got huge aptitude and ability, but they have no experience or exposure. So imagine reading something reading about something your entire life, but you can never see it, you can never touch it, and those opportunities are not just there yet. So what you find is in organizations like ours is very limited team play. It's something that you kind of got to teach, because listen, I've spent time educating myself and I'm not here to share that. I'm here to use my skills directly. So you end up with embracing new things being extremely difficult, not for lack of ability. We have, we've produced worldwide talent that's gone to excel offshore all over the world. So what we have focused on is being able to involve them. In Copenhagen, there was a presentation by TELUS, and I think it was the CIO that was presenting, and he spoke about bringing Gen AI to every single aspect of the business. Now, up until then, the fact that you're even speaking about AI, you would think this is a hardcore IT thing that you keep with the IT people, etc. But when you look at how it's going to be deployed and the use cases for there, but coming back to, it's something that even at our level, we're saying, hey, make this available, bring everybody in, show them how it's done, and expose them. But our people, we live in Caribbean, so we have a lot of fun. We like to go home at 4:59. So essentially, you've got quite a laid-back workforce with ability, not with the best exposure. So when you come to looking at these solutions, we've gone the route of heavy managed services. We've gone the route of working with all our vendors for them to help us with the delivery of the solutions, while integrating our local workforce to be hands on the ground, get as much exposure as possible, and be part of the practical implementation. You spoke about COVID and starting this in COVID. The entire mobile solution was done remotely. Like we did, Mavenir did their entire thing remotely. Salesforce, remotely. So we're doing this on video conferencing, remote access, and we're being able to see that deployment happen. So it's going to be interesting to see now, with all that we've been able to achieve in the last year since we started with the Salesforce implementation, that change in the workforce, the wanting to be innovative. Obviously, when you launch these things, there's a lot of pride in saying, I work for this company, we've brought 5G, we've brought down the prices, we've done all these things. Just before we were landing our cable when bandwidth prices were high, and we were talking for like call centers, etc., that they were spending hundreds of thousands of US a month on less than 100 megabits, right? Which we know, is like, when our cable were coming there, the competition was locking everyone into, we're running out of time?
Yeah, I think we maybe, do we have,
Let me just
finish your thought.
Yeah.
Finish your thought.
So they started putting out tenders to lock in contracts for everyone. And I went out and said, hey, we'll bid too. And I bid all the prices 80% less, knowing fully well that we couldn't deliver and they had to match it. And that was kind of where we saw, when you manage costs in an organization, which a lot of this is doing, that's where your competitive edge comes from. So you got to think, okay, I like to have the best, but I also need to get it at the most affordable price. And if I'm doing the same thing that everyone else is doing it at the same cost and with the same way, I'm just becoming part of a commoditized marketplace. How do we reflect and differentiate and to bring that customer value?
Perfect. Thank you. Andy, I don't know whether we have time for questions, but do you have a question top of your mind that you want to ask, or maybe one for the audience?
Well, yes. Maybe first of all, though, if there's a question from the audience, I shouldn't use that one. So anybody have a burning question? If not, I am quite fascinated to know, Vishok, if you did this again in 2025, what would be your advice to somebody in that position, a CEO who's looking to do a transformation starting from 2025?
Well, I would. That's a good question, and I think it's an easy answer. You really got to look to see what it is you're trying to deliver, not what it is that I have and the next guy. Start with what does that experience look like, and do not confine yourself to what you think at that moment the technology allows you to do. Because one of the things is some people, especially I find it in a little bit of the older generation, which is myself included, you're kind of locked in by what you know traditionally, and you're not able to totally grasp how vast these modern solutions are, and how robust they are, and how realistic it is to implement it. So you tend to think, I have an investment, can I expand this investment? Or can I stick with what we've put so much effort into something? While you should probably be exploring, do I take this and just that's the end of it, and I go towards getting something absolutely brand new that gives me that cutting edge, moving to something that's cloud. I don't need to have that protection, that I need to have that private cloud and feel and touch everything, but I may be able to use that money with the solution. So I would say, do a full evaluation, but do not be afraid to put aside what you think is your solid investments or sunk costs or that you've spent a lot of time building to switch to something that might just outright be better out there. So evaluate thoroughly and be sure of your decisions and start with looking at what it is I want to deliver as opposed to what my stock is going to allow me to deliver. So.
Perfect. Thank
Good
you.
advice, I think, for any of you CEOs planning to launch a new business in 2025. Thank you very much indeed, Vishok. And
Thank you.
Vishok. Great. Okay, next up, Michael Cummings is the Director of 5G Revenue Management at Echostar, now part of Dish. And Marc Price is CTO of MATRIXX Software. As you may be aware, Echostar has very big customers. And so you're going to tell us, gentlemen, about what you call the enterprise native network, which you built. So over to you.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you, Andy. Thank you for having us here today. So maybe give you a little bit of history for where Echostar and Dish have been. So earlier this year, Echostar merged with our sister company, Dish. And I just want to talk through a little bit of the brands that are underneath that to give you a little bit of background and context as we kind of walk through. So underneath Echostar, we have about 6 different brands. Most of these you're probably familiar with, Dish being our satellite television service, Sling being the OTT television service, OnTech is an in-home services provider, so trucks rolling to your house can install TV security to the connected home. And then we have HughesNet, which is our commercial satellite broadband network. Hughes services more of enterprises, so network services, satellite communications, base stations, things of that nature. And then finally, Boost Mobile, which is our Open RAN 5G cloud native network that we've spent the last 24 months building from the ground up. Marc, would you like to?
Yeah, so and pleasure to be a part of this deployment. So MATRIXX is one of multiple vendors that's actually part of the deployment. But we are in some sense a glue piece, a cornerstone piece in providing the digital monetization, the rating and charging piece of the total architecture. So we've had to integrate using the principles of ODA with a lot of other piece parts around us. We're a true product company, and MATRIXX is focused on being a convergent, composable, cloud-native aspect of all of this. So again, pleasure to be part of the solution and share with you today.
Thank you. So how did we get to this digital business architecture? So I think, fortunately for us, over the last few years, having the opportunity to go build a cloud-native 5G network, that really provided the impetus not only of building a network that's on the cloud, but building a BSS, OSS stack that is also on the cloud, and looking at those different principles of going out and choosing best of breed partners such as MATRIXX, and many of the others who are here today are partners of ours. And so putting those together and really being that cloud first, having that interoperability and the flexibility, I think it's been tremendously important to us. And especially now as we've had 2 companies come together and you see all of those brands out there, it's provided a great foundation for us to be able to go serve whatever comes to our way, whether it's a government contract coming our way, whether it's enhancing the Boost Mobile brand, the Genmo brand, and those things. So it's been a critical piece of our architecture, and MATRIXX playing a key role in that. And I don't know if there's others areas that you want to touch upon how MATRIXX provides that.
Yeah, so this really is a pioneering initiative in a lot of ways, and I think that shouldn't be underestimated. What Dish, now Echostar, has done here really is pioneering and is fundamentally different than a lot of things that came before it. So I'll share with you some of the reasons why I say that and some of what it means from MATRIXX's perspective alone in this presentation. So first and foremost, again, cloud native isn't something to take lightly. It's something every vendor now says that they are. Some vendors are. Some vendors, you can question what that means. In Dish's environment, this is something that was rigorous and critical, as Michael says, not only because the network is in the cloud, but also the entire business system is in the cloud. That means all of the interactions are in the cloud, and this is via microservices. These are not suite vendors. These are all individual componentized functions that are driving independent functions, doing what they do in the cloud and have to scale, have to be resilient. It really is a testament to the fact that the vendors that were part of this made this work. And it is groundbreaking in the sense of delivering on some of the requirements that are now coming into things like the ODA, but they're also emerging in things that are other standards. An example of which I think would be the standards that are emerging within Linux Foundation around the Cloud Native Telecom Initiative, for example. So there were multiple cloud infrastructure vendors that were part of this as well. And I say that because this has been tried on more than one infrastructure. That's particularly important because every infrastructure vendor has their own opinionated version of this. So when we talk about cloud native, it's not just cloud native on a given infrastructure. It really is the ability to scale and drive this on across an ecosystem. And so the fact that has been tried and proven and is scaling here, I think is critically important. The fact that this was componentized from the very beginning, it was understood this was going to be an API first driven initiative. I would say orchestration is a critical component of this. And there's multiple levels of orchestration as well. So there's, of course, service level orchestration, but really I'm referring to the ability, again, to support this at the Kubernetes level, being able to support observability and all the things that you would expect from security as well, all the things that you would expect from a truly interoperable, inter-vendor, cloud native environment. So again, these are hurdles that one shouldn't take lightly, and I think are really proven out through this deployment.
Right, a good point that kind of follows from the previous presentation is this was a network that was being built during COVID. It was also the other point that was a good point that was made was what are the best practices that these different partners are bringing, and how do you have those best practices that enables that interoperability, that flexibility? So having partners such as MATRIXX come in and be able to come in with what I like to say, I want to hear a very opinionated view of things coming in so we can understand and learn from that while we're also knee deep in focusing on building out the network. So this is where I would say really laid the foundation for us for putting in that business architecture. And what's critical to that is that just provides us a tremendous amount of optionality. And especially that optionality comes into play when you start hearing convergence, where do different product lines come to? We can look to partners such as MATRIXX, we can look to our other platform providers and plug and play different capabilities coming in there. So if Boost Mobile needs a certain offer that's geared more towards the consumer versus if Hughes is selling 5G services, we can leverage those and get to the market quickly to meet all of our customers' needs. Because we are trying to come in as the fourth carrier. We have some pretty big competition that we're going after in terms of with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mo. So we have our work cut out in front of us.
Yeah, what I would share on this one, and the previous slide said it as well, is flexibility, right? So from a MATRIXX perspective, I think as part of underpinning a lot of this, it was a question of not only being operationally sound and fundamentally a modern operational platform, but also delivering that flexibility in a way that we think is really important, which is being able to do this in a rules-based manner, to be able to do this in essentially an intent-based manner and without having to write new code in order to do that. So the solution itself is really, it's an enterprise wholesale solution from the perspective of being able to deal with any customer's business models and drive those through rules. And that includes Dish itself, So Boost Mobile essentially being essentially a customer or a tenant of the solution, but also then being able to open and expose that to other enterprises, other MVNO or MVNE partners, and other enterprises. And that's where, again, bringing on board Satellite, bringing on board Sling, bringing on board any of the Echostar businesses, but also external partners and driving those new business models. Fundamentally, this is a foundation software that can scale and can grow and can be taken in new directions. And that's where I think there's a lot of excitement with respect to where this is going to go in the future.
And I think another critical aspect of this that's been important to me is not only you think of just building the network, but it's building the teams. And starting from teams from scratch is having these capabilities, platforms that are open where you can have employees come in and they can learn, they can build their skill set, they understand how to do this themselves. So we aren't tied to providers in a closed ecosystem. So that's been another critical aspect, because then the employees know the most about these lines of business. They know what the business wants. And so being able to go into the different platforms and be able to do that, to be able to build those reusable services while also leveraging the standards from TM Forum have been incredibly important to us.
So I'll kick off this one. So without giving any special sauce, special secrets away with respect to kind of Echostar's business plans, right? You know, what the solution itself is able to do then in a convergent way is deliver on new business models, and we believe that there are a lot of these coming in the years to come. What's very exciting about this is, of course, looking at initiatives like not only TM Forum's initiatives, but also Kamara's initiatives, what's being driven in terms of a multi-vendor ecosystem that makes it possible for telcos not just to be telcos, but to participate in an ecosystem of developers, of enterprises, of new business models that go beyond just simply usage-based business models or recurring or flat-based business models. And that really, I think, is the future. It's what makes this exciting. When we talk about this as a converged platform, it's not just simply taking a look at each line of business as a silo, but looking at this holistically as far as how connected services can drive a new revenue model for really everything that is touched in a connected world. And I think that's where Dish, again, is very well suited as a foundational asset to be able to drive that forward. And Michael, I don't know if you can say more about business plans, but that's the future.
I think what I can just say is you look at those brands and you look at what those brands represent. And our mission is to change how the world communicates. And you look at those different brands and what can happen within those. And what's shown on the right here is what's the foundation that's in place, because we don't know what's going to happen. I think we saw in the keynote, specific to AI, what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months, let alone the next year. But laying the groundwork to allow us the optionality to build upon a strong framework and get to market quickly. So I think that is it. So thank you. Any questions? Or Andy?
Very much, guys. Do you have questions from the audience? All right, well, I will not be shy. I'll open up with a question then. So, one of the complex things that is often the case when dealing with very large enterprise customers and government organizations and so on is that they want their own special portal or interface to their own existing systems. And how have you managed to deal with that? Do you find the standards are important there, or do you struggle with delivering exactly what your big customers want in terms of self-service?
I think the standards are incredibly important because that's a starting point. That gives you those best practices. You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. Now, you're always going to have a really large customer that will be able to dictate things to you potentially, and that's probably a good. No company is going to complain being in that situation. But really having well thought out APIs, capabilities, that it just makes sense for those customers to adopt is the path that we have to go down. And we use some of our brands, take Boost Mobile, are leveraging those same APIs on top of the network. And other brands such as Boost, Genmo are leveraging those same APIs. So as long as we're providing a great product, a great experience, then it should help drive those and hopefully get away from the one-offs that we would see.
Good. Any other questions from the audience? All right. If not, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
To
Appreciate it.
both of you. So, great. Okay, so got this interesting music in between the sessions, but very interesting to see on that slide there, the last one, that the GSMA Open Gateway and the Camara Open APIs, which are exposed to developers. Some of you may know, hopefully all of you will know, that TM Forum's actively involved with Camara and with Open Gateway. We're actually developing what's called our API project is developing what's called the Operate APIs, which essentially turn those service APIs from Camara into products that operators can make money with. We have had a number of Catalyst projects running, looking at these kinds of things and demonstrating end-to-end use cases for Open Gateway with Camara and TM Forum APIs. Two of the leading lights in one of those Catalysts are Scott Griffith, who is I think you're the principal enterprise architect up at GCI in Alaska, and Ronan Bracken, who's the product director for Incognito. So, gentlemen, I think you're going to tell us a bit more about your Catalyst and how it exposes TM Forum APIs together with Camara.
Yeah, well, so
have you.
thank you. Welcome for everyone, and we're going to go ahead and talk about our Catalyst that we took the Camara APIs and explored them a little bit in the third phase of our Catalyst. We started 2 years ago and went into I'll just go ahead and hit the next button. There we go. This gives you a little bit of an overview of our last 2 years of work, 3 years, 3 seasons essentially. And first of all, I want to do a quick shout out to Shingo, who's one of our team members in the background there from NTT. He was a key contributor to our Catalyst project. So this gives you a little bit of a history for the last 3 years of what we've been thinking about. First, we started with a foundational concept around converged access. We thought this was a really important foundation for intent-based services and autonomous networks going forward. And so, bringing wireline, wireless services together as one converged platform was a really important component. Because as we all know, bringing in a new network technology usually comes with its own BSS and OSS stack. And we needed a way to stop the chaos. So applying TM Forum's open APIs and treating that all as one converged layer was a really important foundational step. In phase 2, we kind of explored taking that converged layer and focusing on the small business scenario, where we had focused on fault tolerance of a service that was delivered over a converged access network. This was a scenario where there was a hotel and a kiosk or a point of sale system that could have been disrupted due to a stadium event that was on the same network. And what we did is we used the tools and mechanisms of TM Forum and some of the telemetry and monitoring that we had in place in order to achieve those outcomes. And we were able to apply that to the scenario of delivering an SLA, a very quality service, moving from a wireline service over to a mobile service during the time of congestion or the big peak event. And then after that, we're able to switch it back. And that was really important to demonstrate how the service intent that we described earlier would be delivered across the different network types. And then in the third year, we kind of explored that stadium event and jumped into some immersive technologies and what did they need to be successful. So that's where the Camara interface comes in, and being able to bump up the quality on demand for a particular service that was being provided by a marketplace. And that's being described in our phase 3. This is kind of a quick overview of the outcomes and some of the business opportunities for the Catalyst. So it's no small opportunity out there that is ready to be grabbed. Here you can see the providers and the partners, Catalyst partners and team members that helped us over the years. And then, that's kind of a quick overview. As Andy said, we extended the phase 2 project by adding the Chimera interfaces. And that comes with the GSMA Open Gateway. And then lastly, we just kind of had our speculative immersive experience described here, where a subscriber might be wanting to start in-home, subscribe to enhanced services, and they're in-home on their Wi-Fi, and then they move out to the stadium event, and the location's changing, but their service quality needs to move with them. So location was a really important part of our phase 3 as well. And then this allowed that consumer to either enjoy the event a little bit more, and then the B2B relationship was monetized through direct partnerships. So in the end, it worked out for everyone. I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Ronan here, our partner, delivering some of the technology and describing how we connected all the dots.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Scott, being with GCI in Alaska, he was one of the champions on the project. We get a lot of feedback on our use cases from the champions, which is really critically important for us to kind of develop our Catalyst projects. In this slide here, we show a few different ecosystems, and probably one of the more important ones is the TM Forum, ODA, and open APIs. And I think for what we're trying to do here, I think having that ecosystem within the communication service providers is critical to expose functionality to developers and application service providers out there. In the project, we're focused on using Chimera, and for anyone not familiar with the Chimera project, it's basically providing APIs that independent developers and application providers can use to actually use functionality within the communication service providers network. The particular API that we focus on was the Quality on Demand API, so that if you're an app developer and you need a boost or an enhancement or even a communication service on your application on your phone, then by clicking on the app, you automatically get access to those network services. So think about it, you're using you're sitting in a stadium, you're pointing your phone at a crowd, you want to get information about, say, a game or an event that's going on. So you get that information back. To be able to get and retrieve that information in a crowded stadium with maybe 80, 90,000 people would be pretty heavy on the network, and your application would be probably slow in general. So getting that access to the network to be able to boost that signal was really what we're focused on in this project. So this is a very complicated looking diagram. One of the things that we try to focus on, we focus on our use case here, and you can see a picture of one of our champions. One of our champions was Vietnam Post and Telegraph, or VNPT. You see Tree here from VNPT. He was very happy to have his photograph on this. But he's standing beside equipment. We set up a real lab in VNPT. The previous year, we actually used a lab in Claro in Brazil as well for a similar type of use case. You'll see Tree set up this 5G mobile environment. You use an open 5GS to set up that environment in order to set up that 5G core network. And then you had the UE as well. You'll see at the top right in the diagram the applications that were used. And if I go on to the next slide, this drills down into it a little bit more. So from an application service provider or a developer, they can use the Chimera APIs to access functionality in the network through the TM Forum, ODA, and open APIs. The APIs that we focused on in particular were TMF 640, which was basically provisioning the service, TMF 645, which was for service qualification, TMF 623, which is the SLA management, and TMF 657 for service quality management. So Red Hat, everything ran on Red Hat OpenShift. We use Oryx Gateway, which is based on a Kafka message bus for transferring and doing the integration between the various different applications. Incognito, which is our company, that was the service orchestration. And then Future Connections provided the NICS assurance platform for monitoring the service and doing a service qualification. So there's three main steps. Three main steps here. One is to qualify the service. So if you've got an application on your phone, first of all, you've got to protect your network. And how you protect your network, if you've got a Camara API, you don't want to go directly into your network. So I believe you do need to go through these various other APIs. So the Camara API will do the qualification check first to see, first of all, is there capacity on your network? Can you actually deliver that service in a particular location on a particular time frame? And then once that's determined, then you can provision the service and also set up the monitoring for that service. Make sure that the service, you're meeting the SLAs, you're doing your monitoring of the service to make sure that the customer is getting the quality that he's ordered. I think that all seems like a long and complicated process, but the idea is that that's instantaneous, right? And that's where I think AI comes into play, where when the guy using the application triggers the call to the Camara API, all of that has to happen really quickly. You need to qualify that service quickly. That's where AI plays a major role. And then once that's qualified, provision the service, all has to happen in milliseconds, seconds, if not milliseconds. So just to move on, this is just breaking down the services. It's, how are the services available? So if you've got an application, where is it hosted? Where it's hosted in the cloud somewhere? Someone can download it to their app through the various different, Apple stores and Google Play and so on. And also, and then there's the standardization aligned with AI use cases under the hood. So the standardization, I talked about that, the Camara APIs, the TM-Forum APIs that need to be in place in order to protect your network, protect your business, and also to be able to monetize the services once they get provisioned on the network. And then the third point is the assurance of the network and the various different AI use cases. In our case, we use the Ready engine from Future Connections to qualify the service, but also monitor the service and provide that capability to quickly determine if there's issues on the network and to deal with them. So this is just in terms of Camara. I put this slide in here. Who's using this? There's quite a lot of people using this worldwide. I don't know if you're looking at the news, but recently Ericsson made a big announcement with a number of companies. I'm not going to name them all, but providing this open gateway basically for these companies for access to the networks. So there's a lot of innovation going here. Another use case that I particularly like is in Brazil. They have, if you're taking money out of your bank account, the bank is able to connect into the network. There's an API to check the SIM location and the device location of your mobile. So if you're taking money out of an ATM, the bank is able to go and check through the telecoms network to see that you're actually standing at that ATM in that location. So it's a pretty smart use case. So there's quite a few APIs there, and I think they're really meshing well with the TM-Forum APIs and that connectivity. Yep. There's in Sri Lanka to have one single gateway for all Sri Lanka telecoms, and again, I just looked this up on I Googled these basically, and I found them on the Camara project website as well. So, there's quite a lot of innovation going on here. Etisalat, they were part of our project as well. They've developed developer tools, sandbox, and documentation how to use these Camara APIs. So if you're an app developer, you can go in, use their sandbox, use their developer tools portal to try out things, develop an application, seeking what works for you. So I think there's a huge amount going on here. I think that's our last slide. But I think this is something that this was phase 3 of our Catalyst project. Phase 4 we'll go ahead with another phase of this with the similar champions and maybe hopefully get more champions involved as well. But it's been it's quite interesting. I'm going to knock place over there. So yeah, that's it.
Nice.
So.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So open the floor to questions. Yes, one down here. So there's a microphone coming around. If you would just introduce yourself and your company, and then ask your question. Here you go.
Hi, a question for Scott. I'm curious about the use case you might be seeing for your business or your market.
Yep.
I think you're in Alaska, so
Yep.
The big stadium may not be the
Yeah, that's a great question. When we were doing this catalyst, it was I had to put myself in the mindset of, okay, there's a big stadium which we don't have in Alaska, but it's still worth figuring out the problem, right? What, going through all the gyrations of, solving the problem. But for Alaska, we're very remote. The communities are very isolated, and so one of the major concerns we have there is healthcare. And so being able to get remote access to remote patients, essentially, get them connected with their doctors and their healthcare providers. And so I think, I look at this use case and the stadium use case of where we're going to bump up the performance quality of a connection for a session for a fixed period of time really fits the bill for healthcare, and which is a really important topic everywhere. And in Alaska, being able to get a customer to meet them where they're at. They may not have the best and the highest speed quality, highest speed, I'll just say the highest speed services at the time. And so we don't want that experience between a customer and the healthcare provider to be, bad, and because they're really trying to deal with their health situation. So if we could enable, bumping up that quality for that session so they could see their CAT scans or see some advanced telemetry through IoT connections that they maybe have in the home, I think that would be interesting. And it'll make the call shorter, more effective, and the patient get the care they need. So I really see this playing out in the healthcare. Works out well too because there's likely already business relationships between us and a healthcare provider, providing major connectivity for them, which is really an important part of our business. And those same customers are at home, buying our internet service, and so there's already a natural fit there. So that's what I think would be perfect.
Very good. I'm going to just do a quick audience poll because this is a very hot topic in the industry at the moment, sort of network monetization through open APIs, Camara and Open Gateway. So I just want to ask, put your hand up if you are excited about the potential of network monetization through open APIs to move the needle and generate growth for the industry. So let's see who's optimistic. So that's about like 30% maybe. Let's ask the opposite way around. Who's very skeptical about the potential? Nobody's skeptical. So everyone else has an open mind, which is very good. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, and I think we're beginning to see the sort of emergence of different business models, different ways of going to market with these open APIs. So you mentioned, Ronan, the big announcement last week. That's a kind of the marketplace concept, right? So you've got you can have worldwide service because operators worldwide plug into a marketplace. Yeah. We've seen other things where many of the early implementations were where the networks were exposing directly to their enterprise customers through the Camara API. So where do you two think the most exciting applications are and business models?
To me, I think it's a case of, I think the telcos are trying to monetize their businesses more, right? But I think by opening it up to a whole lot of innovators and app developers out there, you're creating, opportunity for revenues that you haven't thought of before. So if they can take what they have, get access to the network technologies, then they can start building things that, people, you're basically a big brain, a big network across the world trying to figure out how best to use that. And if you can get them using your network, then, you can monetize that relationship, I think.
Yeah, right on. I'd add to that, I think I've been saying this for a while, that connectivity as a service kind of really opens up a new market opportunity for a telco and telecom. And, by focusing on what we do well, which is delivering, a network to a customer, in our case, we're very rural, extreme locations, then let's continue to focus on that, but also enable the new opportunity of connectivity as a service through these open APIs, and then let the innovation come to us. We'll build partnerships and figure out new ways of leveraging that asset that we have, which is what we should be doing. So,
very good. Okay, any other questions? If not, Ronan, Scott, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Great. So now we're going to talk about data. So increasingly, I'm seeing that a lot of people are saying, well, as we get into the era of AI and enabling AI applications, and also as we're looking to make better use of our data in the telecoms industry, we need to really focus on the foundations, getting the data architecture right. So I'm going to invite two speakers, David Sedlock, who's the Chief Data Officer at Zayo, and Fawad Qureshi, who is the field CTO at Snowflake. So gentlemen, please come and tell us a little bit about what the zero data account data mesh is.
So I was talking to a provider recently, and they said that the total data estate that they have there across their entire data centers on-prem cloud is about 2.5 exabytes, 2,500 petabytes. But the unique data that is stored in that state is only about 250 petabytes. Because the same data is being copied over from different systems because there's a data lake and there's a data warehouse and they don't like each other's format and everyone wants their own copy of the data. So you copy that 10 times over into 10 different systems and it starts to grow up in there. And I don't need to tell anyone in this room that telco data is huge. And you cannot afford to keep copying the telco data 10 times over and still expect to be a sustainable business in the marketplace. Before I talk about the solution, I want to do a quick recap. I want to take you back to your college days, people who may have done CS degrees, and I'll talk about the bane of my existence, the book called Structured Computer Organization by Andrew Tannenbaum, where he talked about the von Neumann architecture. And he mentioned there are 4 elements in a computing architecture. You have the processor, you have the memory, you have bus and storage. After 70 years of all the innovation, still everything remains the same. Whatever system it is, whether it is a Gen AI system, whether it is a mainframe system, they still have these 4 basic components. One of the key challenges in this architecture is that storage has always remained to be the slowest component. Because of that, you end up creating different types of solutions. The parallel computing spectrum, you have a multiprocessor system, which is called the large SMP. Then you came the MPP world, where we start to decouple, start making them loosely coupled infrastructure, and then you start going into the grid model, the Hadoops, and the cloud of the world. In the center world, there was this concept of balanced architecture. So you want to add more compute to the approach, you will have to have equal ratio storage added. So you can't decouple them. You can't create unbalanced configurations. And as you move from left to right, you're opening up the architecture. And the world is opening up more and more. That's the fundamental of open APIs, open connectivity across the whole world. And it is coming to the world of data as well. Hadoop, 15 years ago, introduced the concept of separation of storage and compute at the software level. What we talked about there was the schema on read. Load the data first, figure out how it is processed later on. So that was a concept that was added, and it got popularized, and people started, OK, let's build more flexible infrastructure in the world. Cloud took it to a different level. Let's do it at an infrastructure level. Let's create unbalanced configuration. If I have to add more compute to the model, I can do that without adding storage or vice versa. And that allows us different level of flexibility. And that is absolutely critical to the way we operate. Now, one of the things that we have done within the Snowflake as a data cloud platform, right? So when we first came out 12 years ago, we created a cloud-native solution where the storage ran in the S3 buckets. But that S3 storage was within the Snowflake environment. There was no way to directly access the storage. You had to go through the compute layer. A few years back, people said, we want to be able to access external data, so let's create external connectivity so that we can query open formats like Parquet, Avro, CSV, and etc. in there. But people are saying now that just read-only access is not enough. We want to completely decouple the storage from the compute model. And that's where open formats such as icebergs are coming in. And people are saying, OK, storage should not be part of the compute engine completely. In fact, there's a venture capitalist in California, Tom Tungus, and he wrote this blog, very interesting blog. I highly encourage you to read it, where he talks about why databases will stop charging for storage in the future. Because storage will no longer be part of the data engines. Storage will become an independent construct, and you will have multimodal compute connected to the same storage layer. So that you don't have that problem of copying that 200 petabytes of data 10 times over to make it 2 exabytes. All of those systems should talk the same data format, same flexibility, so that you are able to build that flexible ecosystem. And once you have that flexibility, you start talking about how do I connect multiple different systems. So one of the core tenets within the Snowflake platform is once you have this data in this cloud layer, even if I want to share hundreds of terabytes of data between 2 Snowflake accounts, that data sharing is done in 1 second because it does not create a copy of the data. It is metadata access to it, and that creates a lot of flexibilities. And talking about the flexibility, let's take this concept a step forward. We talk about data mesh, right, a lot, right? So a singular core tenet of data mesh is the domain owner should be the data owner, and how we can apply this concept in there. So we have a number of customers who have built this concept. So imagine we have a central organization. It could be a large multinational group operating in multiple countries, and we want to collect data across multiple countries. Each country is responsible for their own data products in their own domain, but we want to build a holistic group-wide approach. So let's build this account, the pink account. We are calling this the zero data account. It will have no data, hence the name zero data account. We'll have a country 1 operating in teal, building domain A and doing a zero copy sharing, building their own products, and sharing the same data products with the group. We can have another group operating in separately, building their own products and doing that sharing into the ecosystem. And that way, you can combine all of this data across multiple countries into a singular group without creating copies of the data. And what's even more beautiful in this approach is you can have the pink account running in AWS, you can have the teal account running in Microsoft, and the orange account running in Google, and still this approach would work very nicely. And this approach has been proven beneficial in many different customers, especially for ones who have been going through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And talking about mergers and acquisition, I'd like to invite David to talk about the story of Zayo, where they took a lot of similar approaches there.
Excellent. Appreciate it. So let me first ground on who is Zayo. We're the largest independent fiber provider in the United States. We have Western Europe and South America as well. 18 million route miles, fiber miles, and 145,000 route miles. Now, why I put this up is that we've been in business for 17 years. Most people don't even know about us. Our largest customer are all the hyperscalers, all the big telcos in this room, and other large providers. So we're the backbone providing fiber to a lot of the data centers across the United States as well. So why is it important and how it tied together? Over the last 17 years, we've acquired 49 companies to grow, have inorganic growth. And over the last 4 or 5 years, now it's around how do we scale and modernize our company operationally, technically, and otherwise. And through those acquisitions, preceding the last 2 or 3 years, we had zero focus on technology, business, and data operations, integrations, or standards. So when I say we didn't have, that's very generous on the slide, we had zero standards around that. So when the second day on the job, I was stuck in, immediately jumped into our board meeting, And they immediately asked me, well, what are you going to do around generative AI and AI? And I said, I'm going to do nothing with it. That's what I'm going to do. So I got kind of this little nickname as Mr. No. It wasn't that it was no, it was not yet. And so what you're seeing here on the slide is a lot of the foundational capabilities that we've been on that journey on, and we're on the back side of that now, but I want to highlight. And the first thing we did is that we did not have an enterprise data model. We did not have any standards around APIs. We did not have any standards around data models. So we said, well, why don't we just adopt the TM Forum models for that? So that's what we did. I'll also tie it back in here when I talk around our data products. So then going from the top left and going across, what a lot of people, we all talk around technology and how cool it is, but if you don't have the business ownership of the data up front in the business processes, putting it into our core systems and having the owner and accurate and timely and completeness of it, we can build all the cool tech we want, but it doesn't matter because they're not going to own it. So that's the first thing that I told our board was, well, it's not, you might as well just not have me here if you're not going to participate in this journey that we're going down. So set that anchor up front. The second thing is we didn't have a data platform. So you actually have to build a data platform. So we built the data platform, single data platform. The next three talk around our data products. If you guys were in the first with Andy Marcus, I don't know how many people saw that. He talked about the data products. And the data products, very similar to theirs, it's critical data elements, it's the data libraries, and it's the business-ready data sets. Those are considered the data products. The critical data elements, those are the individual items that if you don't do them or you don't make sure they're accurate and complete, the next person down the line or the next application down the line cannot do what they need to do, okay? Data libraries. Data libraries is where we use the ETOM SID model, where we put everything from our source system and align that into the 8 standard ETOM SID model framework. So if and when we have any future acquisitions, then I can just say, well, align up for the ETOM SID framework, and then day 0 when we close the deals, then let's just report out on that structure and that discipline. So again, leveraging the industry standard structure. The last one on those data products was the business-ready data sets. So these are the accumulation of the data. For example, if you want to know everything about network or everything about a customer or an account, then those are the business-ready data sets. I call those the gold data sets. So that's what we'll be pointing everything to and from whether it be reporting, dashboards, data science, AI, ML, whatever it may be, is that we're pointing all those consumption mechanisms to those gold data sets, establishing a single version of the truth. And then, and I think Andy said that too, he called it curated data, okay? Then along with that, we have the data product catalog where we house all those things in. As also part of the data product catalog, we ultimately, or not ultimately, it's one of the first things we do, we actually profile every single application that we have, pull that technical metadata, and this is the first place where we did actually use generative AI, and we said, here's all the technical metadata. Now, why don't we translate that into business terms? And then I put those back up and presented those back to the data stewards and say, well, how do you want to change, modify, delete? And then we establish those definitions against the critical data elements that I mentioned earlier. And instead of focusing on 1 million data elements, we're focusing on, in Zayo, we're focused on 819 critical data elements. Let's get excellent at those. Not 1 million, let's focus on 819, that's manageable, tangible. Along with that, you have to look at how you're maturing. So I established a data maturity index, measured myself objectively along with some other independent providers and say, how are we progressing against that journey? Now, along with all of that, because I've done this stuff before, is that I knew I couldn't just say, give me a whole bunch of money and then I'll be back to you in 3 years and when I can get to it. So I established a very small team. There's 4 people on my team that are working on what I call data quick strikes. Not just tactically, but it also sets up how we're going to evolve and lead into AI and generative AI capabilities and adoption and monetization. So we had 3 focus areas that we're looking on here on the data quick strikes. And what these are are: one is cost savings, two, revenue increase, three, network optimizations. So I focused 4 people, it's not a lot of people, but said, we're gonna look at the most painful problems we have in our business, and then how do we focus and use data to then save money for the company. And so we had 3 or 4 items that we delivered 11 data quick strikes in 2023. It was tens of millions of dollars of direct savings to the company. It flipped my cost center, typical cost center, into a profit center, right, across the board. So why is that important? It's important for a couple ones. One, I knew these are all fundamental capabilities that we are building and we have now built, but I was delivering value back to the business immediately, not waiting. So when I asked for more things on the technology side, they go like, how much do you need? And then I get, it's a much easier sell to get it. It also sets the foundation where we're at right now is we're gonna start leveraging all the AI capabilities with our key partners, what's already built into their tool suites and platforms, like Salesforce and Snowflake and a few others that we're leveraging. So the last thing I want to mention, I'm not going to go through this slide. It has all these same components on here that I just described, but what I want to highlight is this purple box in the middle. The purple box in the middle is we partnered up, and I used Calibra, Global IDs, and a few others in the past. I specifically chose Global IDs when I came to Zayo. And why was this important? Because we have to profile, not just initial profiling, but ongoing reprofiling of all of our technical metadata within our source systems, right? With those critical data elements. And then ultimately, you then can put data quality controls on top of that and create data lineage across all the fabric that we're doing across Zayo and all our source systems. And why is that important? I call that the oxygen for our AI. If you don't maintain that foundational technical metadata, the associated business metadata and critical data elements, then you're going to have drift in your AI models. You're not going to have consistency around it. And that's why I told up front why I was considered Mr. No. We can't go do all that because if you scale things on very poor quality data, it's only going to be bad data. It's going to be worse data because it's going to scale it faster. So we've gotten past this point. We've delivered tens of millions of dollars of direct value while we're building these core capabilities. And now we're at that point where we're having really specific use cases going against the gold data sets or the business-ready data sets that we've established. And now we're off to the races. Now we just had our board meeting last week. I stood up there and talked for 5-10 minutes. And they're going like, what can we do? What can we do to help you accelerate this now? Because we saved the money, we built the foundation, and now we went a little slower to now accelerate into the future. So that's what we did over the last year and a half.
Okay, we didn't prepare any questions, so I'm going to kind of shoot off the cuff. Hope it isn't surprising, but we hear quite a lot nowadays about when we're coming to using AI applications, we need to represent data differently, knowledge graphs, maybe in event logs, and use event streaming architectures. How important is this in your data strategy, David, and maybe more generally, do you think for the industry, Fawad?
It's not really, so I'm just being very blunt, it's not. And the reason why it's not that it's not important, it goes back to what I originally said. We're doing the crawling phase, and those are more advanced capabilities. And yes, we're going to get to those things, but let's start adding the value as soon as we can. And so what we always talk about, the last thing I said, and I'm going to anchor back on the last thing I said to our board last week was, I'm all about right now making sure that we maintain and run what we built, and how many gold data sets that I can drive out to drive value back to the business. And if I'm not adding value back to the business, all the stuff I did was for naught. So yes, we're going to get there, but it's more fundamental right now is saying I'd much rather go slower and focus on something that I can save millions of dollars and save churn, and then I can get to more advanced capabilities after we scale better and more.
Right. get the foundations right, because there's no point in representing bad data in all kinds of exciting and interesting ways. Yeah.
That's right.
Fawad, do you have thoughts on
So I really love what David said, oxygen for AI. And I have a personal story there. So one of the things that I always talk to my clients about is most of the data systems that are built today are built for human-to-machine connectivity. The knowledge about the machine is in somebody's brain. It's not documented. It's not done anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was asked to do a hackathon for a very major supply chain company in the US. You know the name. I'll skip the name. And on the day of the hackathon, the guy who knew about the data, he fell sick. We were 5 people in the room, data scientists, Uber PhDs and all those kind of things. For 8 hours in that data system, we could not find the customer address column. There were 50,000 tables in that system. Each table had 100 columns. We had 5 million columns, and we were running all kind of wildcard queries in the dictionary table to find the customer address. And it was a delivery company, so it had customer address and location somewhere, right? So they weren't dropping off the packages randomly on this. The next day, the guy comes back and said, "You could not find the customer address column? It is called CU_AD. I said, "Of course it is called CU_AD. So when 5 reasonably intelligent humans could not find a customer address column in a delivery company's data warehouse, what chance does an AI, which is prone to hallucination, have in getting to a correct answer on that system?
Yeah. It's
It's applause.
so to that end, that's one of the first things that we did is that when we profiled our core applications of global IDs, it pulled in all the technical metadata. And most everybody in this room, I'm sure they're going to nod their head. Like you look at it and go like, I have no clue what the hell that is, right? Around it. But then we use Gen AI to then translate into business terms, and they go, oh, there's the customer ID. Oh, there it is, right? It's like it pops out right at you. So that's one just really basic is translation from technical to business consumption, ability to do that, and then have ability to, edit, delete, change on how those are defined with the people that actually run the business and do it. That's a perfect, that's not going to necessarily save you millions of dollars, but it brings context and glue across the whole enterprise and makes everybody more accountable for it. Yeah. And then you don't have to have that one data science that knows it.
Yes.
The one role that, I don't know how many other people do it, but we have what's called data product engineers that I had in my old company. I've hired more here, and we call them the curators of data. And so they're the ones creating all the glue between the customer ideas and, well, what exactly that in this field and what have you. Well, when you're pulling in the Gen AI business context to the technical metadata, then you don't have to have the DPEs making that translation. It's the AI helping with it, and then you're doing validation as opposed to then creation of everything that you're doing. So,
Fantastic. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Really great. And if you'd like to explore some of these topics on data a bit further, then I can recommend TM Forum's collaboration project on modern data architecture. So please, TM Forum members, join in with that and learn from your peers, help to contribute. Okay, final case study today is from AT&T Mexico, where Ruben Pineda is the Director of Architecture and Technology, and he'll be assisted by Patrick Debicki, who is the Field CTO at Realize, and they're going to be telling us about intent-driven network lifecycle management. So, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay.
Hello. So the first thing that is really needed on this journey is a mindset shift, right? And I would even say that the level of the mindset shift that you need to make is like moving from a desktop phone to a smartphone, right? We need to be focusing more on outcomes, not on the ownership. We need to be more customer-centric, more agile. We need to do things quicker. And this is going to bring us the cost efficiency when we transition from large upfront investment of building things, if we can use the service approach, right? We don't need to build upfront. We can get it much, much quicker.
We cannot see them.
But migrating from the legacy to cloud native networks takes a lot of effort, right? So there is a lot of aspects going on in there, right? So we need to be looking at infrastructure, core functions, automation, scalability. There is a lot of aspects, migrating from legacy to intent and data-driven. If you look at the people-centric, it's physical, monolithic, manual, fixed. It sounds really heavy, right? But then we move to the intent and data-driven. It does bring a lot of benefits. Cloud-native, microservices, intent-based, elastic, right? So it's all more digital in nature and more agile in nature. But it doesn't come easy, right? There is a lot of challenges to overcome. And one of the first one is cultural resistance. There is a lot of studies telling that only around 20, maybe to 30% of people are happy to embrace a change. Most people don't like a change. They resist a change. But what people are afraid of is not really a change. It is the unknown, right? So a gradual implementation of the change and a gradual implementation of the new approach is something that can help overcome many challenges. And Ruben can tell you that, in his approach, he didn't decide to create automation team from the scratch. He first started implementing automation within the existing teams, blending the teams together, making sure they learn and understand that doing the automation is not something to threaten their jobs. Doing automation is something to bring their skills into another level. Anyone understands Latin here? Roma non fuit una die condita. Rome was not built in a day, right? So this is really the approach in order to introduce the change. So we introduce step-by-step automation initiatives by blending the different teams together, by blending the SMEs with the cloud experts, by looking at the things with a strategic perspective. Not doing it, okay, I need to automate this job, I'm gonna just do the automation scripts. I'm going to do the automation scripts, but I'm gonna have a vision in place. And the vision is, I need to have the APIs and I need to have the abstraction layers by design, whatever I do, so that I can reutilize it at a later stage. If I need to implement something doing in a manual way, I'm gonna divert the effort to implement automation first and then doing the same thing in an automated way. So eventually, having the vision in place, we came up with a framework that will help deliver quick wins with the tactical benefits while having the strategy and long-term business benefits in place. So there are a few components in here I'm going to mention. So one thing, for example, we started with the things that were taking the most of time, most effort. For example, golden image creation. For the VMs, for the operating system, for the applications, it takes a lot of effort and the process is very complicated. The interactions between different teams is complicated. So this helped to not only automate the process, but also automate the execution of this process. Infrastructure of code, you've got automation tools on the market, but not if you need to deal with different type of clouds on the back end, right? So creating an abstraction layer where you can put in the parameters and then this is actually automatically transferred into the automation script in Terraform or Ansible gives, again, a lot of benefit. The problem also comes when you want to test for the connectivity, right? This is always coming as a problem. Again, another quick win, but implemented in a strategic way. And eventually the generic automation, any type of activity, remote activities that you can implement. But then the problem comes that sometimes you lack visibility. So in order to improve the visibility of all the automation processes, we put in the BPMN layer on top that provides you the visual way and drag and drop capability to automate the processes. And this is all ODA-inspired service-based architecture where we can integrate with any type of APIs. So if we want to interact with ODA-compliant network function deployment, that's very easy to put in place. So I'm going to hand over to Ruben for the next slide to talk about a few of the use cases that brought the benefits within AT&T Mexico.
Thank you. First, we will talk about the use case called cloud readiness. Okay, this use case is related to preparing the cloud solutions for different types of applications. We faced a lot of issues with the time to market when we deliver the applications. This lead unhappy customers. So in AT&T Mexico, we in charge to automate this process. We review it, which process take a long time to deliver the applications. So in this case, we focus on the golden config process. And we try to automate this process because this process has a lot of interactions between different teams and we need to add a lot of configuration and populate this configuration to the cloud. So in this case, we take a lot of time to do this effort, and with the help with the team, we try to reduce the time, and we achieve from 147 days to 86 days the time for deployment the solutions. So in this case, you can see a good improvement using the automation, and we will review the next slide. Okay, we use the same framework as the previous slide. So in this case, we are focused on the network function modeling and deployment. We take the same framework in order to automate the golden image. The golden image, as I mentioned, is a complicated process in AT&T in order to deploy the applications. So we take the specific process that take a long time to deploy the solutions and started with those processes in order to accelerate the implementation. As my partner mentioned, we deploy the solutions in multiple cloud providers. So we try to review it and to focus how we can deploy these solutions using the same model. In this case, we are using the same model for deploy the solutions on AWS, on OCI, and in OpenStack. In this case, we can improve the process from 67 days to 9 days. Okay? And if you want to continue.
Yes, and there is just another example. You know, we can multiply the examples of the benefits of driving the deployment in an automated way. And it's a gradual process. So we add more and more use cases on top of the framework. And you know, in this case, that was another savings from, you know, and you can see that there are savings on both time to market and on the actual OpEx. When it comes, you know, we use actually much less people and less experienced people to deliver the outcome. And we can move the people with the best experience to actually drive the further automation and deliver even new use cases on top. So the last use case I wanted to show is actually end-to-end deployment of core network. And we start here with nothing. So we don't even have here as a first point, we actually deploy the automation framework. So with one quick click, we can deploy all of the framework, and then we can use this framework to allocate resources on AWS. Then once resources are allocated, we can deploy Kubernetes cluster. Then we can deploy network functions. Then we can deploy tool that is doing the test cases on top of the 5G network. And then we can analyze the outcome of this test cases with the RCA. So if you would like to visit us at the Realize booth, we can actually show you a demo how it all can work end to end. So to conclude, while the new generation of networks makes the telecom industry ready for the service-based approach, the implementation of it is not that easy, and you need to do it in an efficient way. And as we said, the mindset shift is very important, and the way you do it and the way you engage your teams is very, very important. We found out that the gradual implementation brings a lot of benefits, doing this step by step, but not to forget to have the vision where we want to go and how we want to comply the standards to make things more efficient, and how we can accelerate going forward. So thank you very much for your attention, and we take any questions.
Okay, questions from the audience? Yes, one here.
Hello, hello. Now, just a quick question about the savings that you shown on the slides, because you show first the manual operations and some man-working days, and then there were like two numbers, one on top of the others, on both the previous time that or efforts that took the operations and the time or efforts that took afterwards. Can you clarify a bit more? Because some of them were slightly different between, I mean, maybe one is the total amount, or the other is the individual, or something like that.
Yeah. So the top was talking about the time to market. So how many days overall it took to deliver the outcome. The second number was talking about the man days, right? So we're talking about how many people and what type of experience of the people was needed in order to deliver the outcome. So one was talking about the savings as a time to market, another was pretty much OpEx savings, right?
Thank you very much.
Other questions? I think there's a fundamental difference between sophisticated rules-based automation, where the rules are created by humans and understood by humans, moving to an AI-based where the rules are generated by machines and maybe not even understandable to the humans. So I'm interested in to what extent you've taken that journey and begun to use AI, begun to leave control with the machines. Is the industry ready for this? Ruben, maybe you could give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna take it up.
All right, okay.
So basically, we are looking to implement Gen AI into the framework, integrate into the framework. However, we are not at this stage yet. Now, the thing is that you need to build trust over time for the operator to start implementing automated actions. Now, as we all know, Gen AI is not deterministic, right? So in order to implement Gen AI type solution, you need to have a very well built safeguarding layer in between. And this is not an easy task, right? So we actually have a solution when it comes to the ticket assistant. So we use Gen AI, for example, to look into the historical tickets in order to recommend what were the historical tickets that related to exactly similar type of problem. And this is a good example of implementation of Gen AI at this stage. If you want to drive changes or implementation on the network, you need to have a very good validation layer because we know Gen AI is not deterministic.
I think that one best approach of this framework is that we can improve every time that we make more interactions. So if we want to use AI, the more important here that we can start to integrate this information to a database and then start to learn about that kind of information that we can help take from the database. No? Yeah. And I think it's important to have all this information in order to start with some EA use cases.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, thank you to all of our speakers today. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more question actually. Let's just quickly see if we can get the microphone here for one more. We do have time. Actually, according to the clock, we have 6 seconds, so it's probably better be a quick one.
Yeah, I wanted to know what are some of the insights, lessons learned about intent-driven networks, right? When you think about end-to-end intent-driven networks, you have to do AI at all the layers, right? OSS, BSS network. What are some of the lessons learned, challenges you can share with everybody? Thank you.
Lessons learned. So lesson learned is really that, I think the main point was the Rome was not built in a day, right? So we cannot do everything at one go. So I think that's the main lesson that we want to share. And we are going to, the thing is that once you have the framework that allows you to keep adding the use cases, you can keep adding and improving and more. So one of the things that we've got on the roadmap, for example, is the automation use case marketplace. Whatever is being developed, you can actually have this automation as an item that you can drag in, modified parameters, and implement it, right? So this allows you to accelerate. The more you build, the more value you get.
Mm-hmm. And I think, what you build on which day, to your analogy of Rome being built in a day, is maybe different for different operators, but I think there's a lot in common across the industry. A good place to explore that with peers and partners is in the TM Forum Autonomous Network project. So a lot of operators sharing their experience and best practice there. So, okay, I think we'll let you go to lunch, but thank you very much to the audience and to our speakers.